So we had some really interesting Rush Duel news this week, as we found out that Rush Duel is getting Forbidden and Limited list, which is really, really cool. It's something I've been asking for a long time, and it looks like we're finally getting it. So this news broke at Jump Festa. This is basically a Japanese event where a bunch of different Shonen Jump franchises kind of release news about new manga, anime, in Yu-Gi-Oh's case, things for the card game. We got some interesting news about the Go Rush anime, and we got some interesting news about some of the new card releases, but the biggest piece of news was the Forbidden and Limited list. So they're calling it the Limit Regulations. And this list comes into effect starting January 1st, 2023, so right as the new Legend rules come into play. So far, no cards are forbidden. I think that's probably for the best, because you don't really want to start banning out cards if you don't have to, but 3 cards did get limited. So Necromade Nana, Thunderbolt the Blazing Thunder, and Secret Order. So Secret Order, I think, doesn't really need much explanation. It's been quite a controversial card. It can be quite fun to play, but the oppressiveness of this card and the just amount it's represented is maybe way too high. Almost every time you look at a tournament deck list, it is running 3 copies of Secret Order, and it is just running a plethora of level 7 normal monsters to make this ridiculous spell card work. And with that in mind, I feel like trying to diversify the meta is the idea behind this restriction. I feel like a diverse meta is usually being the keyword, a good meta. Because if there's lots of things viable, that means a lot of different people can come playing the deck that they like to play and try to have interesting matchups rather than the same mirror every single game. So the other big rising star and the fantastic tournament deck is Thunderbolt the Blazing Thunder, which again has a similar kind of stigma to it, where to play a Thunderbolt deck, you don't so much play like an archetype, you're kind of playing the Thunderbolt deck, which is just a bunch of different level 7 monsters, so you need different cards with different names in the graveyard to use Thunderbolt's effect. So both of these decks are interesting in their own right. The problem is they are maybe a little bit too good, because you don't really want to, or if you could, you wouldn't want to kill off the Secret Order and Thunderbolt decks. You would just like to bring them down in power level, but unfortunately, because of the nature of how the cards work, that's not really possible, so limiting them is the next best thing. Will hopefully kind of smooth out the power level of tournament decks, and we might be able to see some newer decks kind of show up. But what's more likely is we're going to see the decks that are kind of at tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 kind of thing just bump up a little bit. So we'll see things like, I think, Light Galaxy, Light Machines, Dark Galaxy. I think Wind Psychics have been doing quite well as well. We'll probably see those decks start to come a bit more into the forefront, because I don't think people are going to hard commit to these kind of strategies with Thunderbolt and Secret Order limited, because it means the chances of seeing them during the game are now reduced, and the effect they'll have on the game should be vastly diminished. So Necromade Nana is an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure why this card was limited. I've seen it played in the Secret Order lists as like a 1 or a 2 of, but I don't see, or at least I haven't seen many tournament decks which have been maxing out on this. Maybe there's something I don't know, and if you have any idea why Necromade Nana specifically was targeted, just feel free to chuck it down in the comments. Maybe there's a new card coming out that I'm unaware of that makes this card broken, or maybe it has been seeing a lot of tournament play that I'm just unaware of. But yeah, Necromade Nana did definitely surprise me. So another interesting piece of news we got was the new Go Rush Switch game will have limit regulations in place. Now, my assumption would be that it's just going to be these limit regulations. So Necromade Nana, Thunderbolt, and Secret Order will be limited to 1, and that's it. But because of the way this is worded, it technically could mean that they are going to have the option to change the limited list going forward if they want to, which I think they probably won't, because especially for the English versions of these games, we don't believe we've got any of the updates to the Sevens game. But if they do for the Japanese version of the game, then we might see updates to the Forbidden Limited list in the future, which could be interesting. Definitely not against that. So another interesting piece of information we got was for the tournament scene over in Japan. So they're introducing the Galaxy Cup, which is a new Rush Duel event, which is aimed to be the strongest duelist in Japan. So that's basically a Japanese nationals for Rush Duel, which I think is really, really exciting. Hopefully we'll get to see some awesome deck lists from that, and hopefully that just means we'll get more support for the Rush Duel card game in general, and hopefully maybe it'll eventually come to the West. You never know. I'm still hopeful. So another interesting card that got shown off was a new card for the Legend booster pack coming out, which is the FiveHeaded Dragon. This is a very interesting card because it's something you can't summon in Rush Duel. Right now, in order to complete a fusion summon, outside of some very niche scenarios like using the Power Bond spell card, the fusion material has to be on the field. And since FiveHeaded Dragon requires you to have 5 dragons to make it, you cannot have 5 dragons on the field, which means you're going to either need monsters that count as 2 dragons, That'd be a bit of a strange effect. Or what's probably more likely is something along the lines of Dragon Mirror, which lets you fuse the 5 dragons from the graveyard to summon this out. But I feel like that combination might be a little bit too strong, because if you're able to just load up the graveyard with dragons, drop a spell, and then drop a 5,000 attack monster that cannot be destroyed by battle with Dark, Earth, Water, Fire, and Wind cards, that seems a bit bonkers to me. So I'm not sure exactly what the plan is, or if they're just going to include a way to fusion from the hand, because that probably is more balanced, but at the same time could be very limiting. We'll have to see what they end up coming out with. But FiveHeaded Dragon, I'm a big fan, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it in Rush. So another card that got teased recently is a new Legend card coming to the next booster pack that's coming out, Double Star of the Assault, and that is Guildford the Lightning. Now this was one of Joey's ace monsters back in the day, and basically is a 2 tribute monster with 2800 attack, 1400 defense warrior. Not much to really say about that, but his effect is you contribute this card by tributing 3 monsters, and if it was tribute summoned this way, you can destroy all of your opponent's monsters, which is pretty bonkers. Especially in Rush, where being able to get 3 monsters out, tribute them all, and slap this guy down is really not that difficult. Wiping out your opponent's board, and then if you have any other way to push for damage, you could get some crazy big damage in. But at the same time, Rush has been introducing lots more board wipes recently. It's like Darkhold, Torrential Tribute, Mirror Force, the new Legend card, Dark Lord Zerato. We just have so many board wipes, so why not throw in another one? This does feel a little bit like Rush might just be board wipes the game, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it does mean the games will be a bit faster, and it does mean it will be a bit faster paced, which can be a bit more exciting. And since this card is a Legend card, it might even receive some more support in the new Legend pack coming out next year. My only hope is that with all of these board wipes, we maybe get a little bit of counterplay to this, just so that when your board gets wiped, you don't instantly get destroyed. Something like a Waboku type effect or a Threatening Roar type effect, just so that you don't get blown out of the game instantly, I think would be kind of healthy. But we'll have to see what Konami decide to do in the future. So that's all the news we had from Jump Festa this week. It's interesting. I am excited to see what happens with the tournament deck lists. And again, hopefully this pushes more archetypes to the forefront, which is something I am always a big fan of. I mean, character draft, I think, is a pretty good indicator that me and Alex really enjoy playing with the archetypes, kind of how the decks were designed to be played. So it'd be really cool to see more of them represented in tournaments. I think just as like a closing note, the other cards that I would like to see maybe limited in the future would be cards that are kind of generic that every deck can play and see a lot of play. Things like Siesta Torero and Sea Dragon Knight, both of which very splashable, very easy to include monsters in any deck. And I feel like for most decks, you'll just kind of throw them in unless there's a reason you can't. Like things like you can only summon, you get locked into one archetype or something for attacking or for summoning for the turn. They're just very, very powerful generic cards. And I think maybe they should be semi-limited or limited in the future. But yeah, that's all the news. Thanks for checking out the video. If you have any thoughts, feelings, or opinions about any of the news that I've said today, feel free to chuck it down in the comments. I would love to get a bit of discourse going and to talk with you guys about it. And with that, thanks for watching.